You know, every single time you tap on an app, you're actually connecting to this huge invisible world of servers, networks, and storage. And all that stuff, the infrastructure, it doesn't just pop into existence. It has a life story. And today, we're going to follow that story from the very beginning all the way to its final planned end.
So that's what we're going to do. We're going to trace the entire life story of an IT system, from that first spark of an idea to its final shutdown. It's a pretty fascinating journey that we call the infrastructure life cycle.
All right, so here's our roadmap. First, we'll get a quick overview of the whole life cycle. Then, we'll dive into how it all begins, with planning and purchasing. We'll see it go live, then we'll cover its long life and maintenance, and finally, we'll watch its planned retirement.
So, what does this journey actually look like? Let's break the whole thing down into a series of clear, logical stages.
It all kicks off with a decision, then moves into buying and building. The bulk of its life is spent right here, in maintenance and running applications. And it all ends with the final step, decommissioning. So let's dive into that very first phase. Let's start at the very beginning. You see, a system's origin story doesn't begin with servers and cables. Nope. It starts with documents, decisions, and, well, a lot of planning. This is the purchasing phase. Now, we're about to hit some jargon here, but stick with me, it's actually pretty simple. Think of the bill of materials, or BOM, as the project's super detailed shopping list. I mean everything, down to the last cable. The statement of work, or SOW, is different. That's the contract. It's the who does what document that makes sure everyone's on the same page. Getting these two right at the start saves a world of headaches later.
And when that shopping list gets, well, really big, let's say it crosses a line like $250,000, things suddenly get way more formal. At this point, company policies or even regulations kick in, and you have to run a strict, competitive bidding process. It's all about making sure the process is fair and you're getting the best value.
And this bidding process is a whole multi-step dance. It starts off broad, with a request for information, just to see who's out there. Then you narrow it down to a short list. Things get serious with a request for proposal. After that comes negotiations, a final best and final offer, and then, finally, a winner gets the contract.
And please do not underestimate how long this can take. This quote from the source material just says it all, a 2-year purchasing process. It really shows you how incredibly complex and high stakes this whole initial phase can be. We are definitely not talking about a quick trip to the store here.
Okay, after all that planning and purchasing, we finally get to the hands-on part. This is where we assemble the hardware, test absolutely everything, and get the system ready for its big debut.
And this is way more than just plugging things in. We're talking about building out the actual data center space, installing racks, running a burn-in period, which is basically a stress test to catch faulty parts early, and meticulously configuring every single component. And when it's all done, you have to document everything so the poor souls on the operations team know what they're dealing with.
Before a single user is allowed anywhere near this system, it has to go through a serious grilling. We're asking some tough questions. Does it actually do what it's supposed to do? Can it handle a massive spike in traffic? Are there any security holes? And, my personal favorite, what happens if we just pull a plug? Can it survive? Every single one of those questions needs a solid yes.
And now for the moment of truth. How do you go live? Well, you've basically got 3 flavors to choose from. You can go for the big bang. Just flip the switch and hope for the best. It's high risk, but simple. Or you could run the old and new systems side by side for a while. That's way safer, but it's expensive. And then there's the phased approach, moving over one piece at a time. It's a middle ground on risk, but it can get really complex. The choice you make really depends on how much risk, cost, and complexity you can stomach.
So the system is live. The project might be over, but the system's life is just getting started. Now we're entering the longest and, you could argue, the most important phase, the day-to-day grind of keeping everything running smoothly. Now this isn't just chaos, it's managed using some really well-established frameworks or playbooks. You've got COBIT for the high-level governance, ITIL for the nitty-gritty service management processes, and DevOps, which is all about bridging the gap between the people who build the code and the people who have to run it.
So how do you keep an eye on everything? With real-time monitoring. The best way to think about dashboards like this one is as the system's heartbeat monitor. They track everything that's happening live, and they'll scream for help with an alert the second something looks off, like the CPU is too high or you're running out of disk space.
But here's the thing. Monitoring tells you that something is wrong, but it doesn't always tell you why. For that, you need to look at the logs.
Log files are basically the system's diary. They write down everything that happens, so when you need to do some detective work to find the root cause of a problem, this is where you go digging.
And this is a perfect real-world example of just how powerful logs can be. A team was hunting a performance problem. They dug into the logs and found the app was trying to open a file that didn't exist thousands of times a day. A simple little fix, and boom, massive performance boost. That's the power of the system's diary. A huge part of maintenance is also about looking ahead. Capacity management is really the art of predicting the future. It's about making sure you have enough horsepower, enough processing, network, and storage, not just for today, but for whatever growth comes tomorrow. It's what keeps you from having a last-minute emergency.
But all systems, no matter how great they are, eventually reach the end of their useful life. And when they do, you can't just pull the plug. The final shutdown, or decommissioning, has to be a carefully planned process to retire the infrastructure safely and cleanly.
It all starts with preparation. You have to make a detailed plan and tell everyone what's happening. But most importantly, you have to go on a hunt for any other systems that might be secretly relying on the one you're about to turn off. Oh, and you also have to be 100% sure that no one is actually using it anymore.
Once the prep is done, it's showtime. You take one last backup, just in case. You pull it out of all your monitoring tools, you cut off its network access, and then finally, you switch it off. The very last step is to physically pull the hardware out of the rack, leaving no trace behind. But even after the power is off, you are not done. This cleanup phase is absolutely critical. You have to cancel software licenses, securely wipe all the data, get rid of old firewall rules, delete user accounts, and update all your financial records. The goal is to make the system vanish completely, not just from the server rack, but from your digital and financial books too.
And that brings us to one final thought. We've just walked through this very physical, very deliberate life cycle. But now, in the age of the cloud, where you can spin up and tear down infrastructure with just a few lines of code, does this whole structured process of planning, building, and decommissioning still matter as much? It's definitely something to think about.